podcast.
Thank you for having me. And I'm really amazed at your confidence on ChatGPT. Since you found on ChatGPT, I think this podcast is going to be some sort of trial of whether ChatGPT really throws up proper results or it's just a hoax. At the moment, I think we have three plays which are Bombay based.
Acha.
One is a play called Common,
Okay, yes.
which is with Kumun Mishra and Shubhra Jyoti and Sandeep Shikhar and Gopal Dutt. That's actually a 10-year-old production, 10, 11 years old production, which is now running out of Bombay. Then there is an Ambedkarite opera, which I directed this year. It's Kavan, is with the Yalgar Sanskritic Manch. That is running in Bombay. I think the next shows are in August, 2nd, 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, at Prithvi.
Lovely.
And then there is another play called Des, with Rangshila. So at the
Okay.
moment, we have three different shows which have been made over different years, which are running in Bombay. Yeah.
You have been, of course, authoring a lot of books, which I discovered recently, and I'm going to catch hold of a few of them. Also, you're a writer, you're a director, you're a professor. So many things, Abhishek. How do you sort of jump from one thing to the other?
I think they are sort of the same thing, really. They are continuous in the sense that pretty
Yeah,
much all my work is in the realm of storytelling.
yeah.
Something happens to be an opera, something happens to be teaching a class or making theater or film or whatever. So there is a continuity, and I think this change of mode, in some sense, really helps someone like me. It helps me to, I think there are some people who like to think about things directly, and there are some people like me who get the idea while doing something else. So I always have a reasonable idea for a play when I'm actually teaching a class, or when I'm in a rehearsal, I sometimes think, oh, that'll be an interesting thing to start a course on. So
Yeah,
these things are complementary. Yeah.
yeah,
As far as
yeah, yeah. Lovely. Tell me, Abhishek, going to a bit into the theoretical part of things, and as I was digging more into your work,
Hmm.
there is something that I have been questioning as also a filmmaker, as also an artist. And I thought that somebody like Abhishek can really help me get inside it and all our listeners who are primarily artists. When you talk about drama in today's times, how would you as a playwright define drama?
Yeah, I think I'll just touch upon what I think is very broad based traditionally. What is drama, and then
Yeah,
think about what it is now.
yeah,
Firstly, I think it's no secret that drama is very specific to each culture. What is drama in north of England is not what is drama in Chhattisgarh.
yes,
So that's a very important thing, I think, for any dramatist to understand that we are making work in a tradition, so to speak. Firstly, the other thing is that there are two main ways in which it has developed over the years. Basically, you either compress time or you expand time.
mm,
So you have, let's say, Hamlet, 3.5 hours. The man comes back home for his father's funeral. 3.5 hours later, he has killed his girlfriend's father. He
yes,
has discovered that his mother is getting married to his uncle. He has seen his father's ghost, etc., etc., etc. One would go crazy if that happened to anyone in 3.5 hours, right?
mm,
But it's not that people don't feel betrayed or don't feel jealous or angry uh, in life. But in Hamlet, you get that in 3.5 hours and
mm,
happening to one guy, and
yes,
that's why we are attached to it. So that's a whole tradition from Hamlet to James Bond. All of that is basically this.
yes,
And then you have the other end, which is the kabuki, the kathakali, the kuriatam, where we are expanding time,
yeah,
where how you pick a flower and smell it can be 1 hour.
lovely,
And both in the hands of great artists is
yeah,
compelling,
yeah,
can seek attention and all of that. So I think contemporary drama, is less loyal to any one school,
Yeah.
like everything is right now.
Yeah.
We are borrowing and testing traditions of all kinds, including so-called modern things like the internet, etc., etc. But I think drama is essentially a play of time. How we introduce a play of time into a story is broadly what
Mm.
I would think a piece of drama is.
Lovely, 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 Abhishek. Tell me, the understanding of drama, then, when we're talking about our whole understanding of literature and drama, is coming from Shakespeare. When we're talking about literature, is coming from Aristotle, when we're talking about film writing as well. So when we go out there and you say, okay, this is my drama, this is my story, which is a drama, and I'm pitching this to the audience in today's times. But then drama then, when it was Shakespeare, and then drama now, which is 2025, post pandemic, digital era, Instagram reels, no attention span of the audience. How does that work now?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I think, first of all, a lot of the stuff that we are probably alluding to is, in the middle of the bell curve. The very bad work and the very great work is often not Aristotelian in structure, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you
Yeah.
watch Kurosawa's films, they are not
Yeah. Yes, they are
Aristotelian,
not.
you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And this could be said about many filmmakers
Yeah.
in various parts of the world.
Hmm.
So there is also, I think, a challenge with theater and film, particularly
Hmm.
because they have to be produced. There is a relationship between the production and the artist, right?
Yes.
And artists in general, I think, cannot be interested in the present.
Hmm.
They have to be
Hmm.
interested in the future or the past.
Hmm.
The present is not the artist's forte.
Hmm.
Which is, I mean, you gave the example of Shakespeare. Is, I think, the perfect example of that. When he writes King Lear,
Yeah.
England is in its present moment going through a crisis of bifurcation. But he writes a play which is actually true for many cultures over many periods of time, because he
Hmm.
writes a play about fathers and daughters. He
Yes.
doesn't write a play about a country getting divided only. So I
Yes.
think whether attention spans are less or more, it's very debatable as to where we are. Where we are, what time of the year it is. Are we talking about people on the internet? Are we talking about people watching Ram Leela around
Hmm.
our country? I think if you count the number of people who watch Ram Leela, it will exceed the number of people who go to the cinema hall in the year.
Yes.
But people watch Ram Leela over a whole month.
Yeah.
So it's not even one day. So it's really a matter of, is our storytelling strong in the format that we are wanting to do? I
Hmm.
think sometimes the challenge is that we are trying to make um work which is short only because we fear that longer work will not be appreciated. But I think artists should not have that kind of fear. I mean,
Hmm.
short-term success cannot be an ambition for an artist. I think it's kind of
Hmm.
pointless to have that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Hmm.
And people can make great things. I mean, some of the greatest Beckett plays are just few lines long.
Yes.
They're a few
Yes.
minutes. So there's no real telling whether it's short or long. I think it's
Hmm.
about the craft that goes into it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Lovely. So when we're talking about thinking, when you're writing, and you're writing because there's a specific way that you're thinking, as a playwright, as a writer, as a director. How are you working on your thinking? Is it a way that you work on your thinking process, and you say that, okay, I'm going to take it in this direction, but this is how I need to think to take it in that direction?
Yeah, it's a very hard question to answer, about one's own work, because you one just works. You do the thing. I think there is a process of, I give my projects time. Each one of them is at least 2 years, if not
Hmm.
three or more,
Hmm.
which is helpful
Hmm.
because it helps you to kind of, first of all, create a syllabus. And by a syllabus, I mean things that I want to read, things, people that I want to meet, art that I want to see, people I want to interview, places I want to go to. This is really, for me, a very important part of the writing process.
Hmm.
Not just like sitting at the desk, but all of this is really.
Hmm.
And of course, what am I reading? That's
Yeah.
also very, and some of the reading that I do is connected to what I'm making, and some of the reading is absolutely not. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's more influential
Hmm.
than, again, the kind of focused thing.
Hmm.
And then as the play, as the project moves, you know, I tend to write a draft, of course, at some point of time, maybe a year later, and then I look at it and I say, okay, if this is the shape, then what's going to happen with this? Sometimes that draft is okay, sometimes it's terrible, and you have to go back to everything you've done before.
Hmm.
So I think, to answer your question, there is something about a goal that
Yeah.
I tend to have, which is
Yeah.
sometimes very technical. For example, in
Do you
comedy,
know that you do you know the end before?
I never know them before, but I'm sometimes interested in very technical things. Like in comedy, I was interested in writing a play within a play,
Hmm.
and which has two languages. Of
Hmm.
Mohan Rakesh has these two great plays, Aadhe Adhure and Ashad Ka Ek Din. One
Yes.
has a kind of classical Hindi, one has a contemporary Hindi, modern Hindi. I wanted to do a play which used both types of Hindi.
Hmm.
That was my goal.
Hmm.
But then what
Wow.
happened with the play is very different. It became a play about the Mahabharata and the Mahabharata inside the real theater and all of that. So,
Hmm.
the Ambedkarite opera that I was telling you about recently, there the goal was that how do you tell an Ambedkarite story,
Yeah.
which is actually being told by an Ambedkarite group, which is the Yalgar Sanskritic Manch. So my goal was to make sure that we are able to say what they want to say. So these goals remain, but the writing process, I think, is very iterative. You know, and the sources are very important. Also, I think a very important thing is to have a good team. I have two or three dramaturgs who are friends and dramaturgs who I work with regularly for
Hmm.
now several years.
Hmm.
They are people I trust with their feedback.
Hmm.
They don't love my work, they don't hate my work. They are just people who can tell me that, okay, for this project, if you're trying this, this is what is working and this is what is not working.
Hmm.
That's really
Hmm.
helpful.
Hmm. Hmm. So you're saying that understanding, knowing your goals, and then of course feeding it with things like who are the people that it should be connected to, the places that it needs to be connected to, and then eventually getting, after you feed your your subconscious mind with everything, is when you actually get onto the paper and say, "Okay, this is how I want to now start writing." So when we talk about starting the writing process,
Hmm.
how in today's times, structurally, how do you think um, anything that how should artists think, is there a sort of, like in filmmaking, there's a lot of people go with the templates of things, like they say that, okay, now we're getting inside act 1, now we're getting to plot point 1, now we're plot point 2, plot point 3, act 4, act 3, whatever, whatever you design it. You following a certain template, or you saying that no, it needs to be coming from your perhaps subconscious mind, as what Van Gogh did with his paintings?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the thing is, I don't think there is like an innocent subconscious.
Mm,
I'm not sure if there's such a thing. Our
mm,
subconscious is influenced by whatever we have heard, read, seen, etc., etc.
mm,
There is a wonderful exhibition I saw of Picasso's many
mm.
years ago, and one of the rooms in that exhibition was only about 50 sketches of Picasso copying Van Gogh, just him
Wow.
copying Van Gogh.
Wow.
And for Picasso, it was very important to be able to copy Van Gogh to get past it.
Wow.
And I think so there is merit in knowing language and structure and grammar and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's one very critical part of the artist's process. I mean, I don't even want to dare to say what artists should do. I don't know. Artists should do whatever they feel like doing. But what I tend to do is to, you know, understand structures of plays or films or whatever that I'm music concerts that I enjoy, and I try to think of it. But ultimately, if I'm sitting down and making something, I should have some ambition in originality, that I'll try to get past that. I like these three things. One was a structure of a Japanese film. One is a mural that I saw somewhere in maybe Haryana, and
Yeah.
one is something else. And but it creates some kind of coherence in my mind.
Hmm.
So I can only give shape to that,
Hmm.
which will neither look like the mural in Haryana nor like the film in Japanese. It will be my own thing.
Yeah.
But I think if I don't have that kind of goal, then I would be terribly bored. You know, I would be bored out of my skull if I had to, if I knew a grammar which I was invested in completely. If I had to
Hmm.
recreate something, I
Hmm.
think it would be terribly boring, I guess, for any artist, I
Hmm.
suppose.
Hmm. Lovely, lovely. That you need to know your goals. Like you mentioned, Picasso was trying to get past Van Gogh. So you need to know go. You need to understand as an artist who are you wanting to get past. Perhaps.
And yeah, but also open to surprise. I think that's a very important goal to have. Like when
Hmm.
we are children, we have a sense of wonder with whatever we are doing. Like you give a child two empty boxes and they can go on for hours.
Yeah.
I think being an artist is about having that sense of wonder with craft.
Hmm.
That's
Lovely.
when it's a complete thing. If one of them goes away, if I
Hmm.
have only craft and no wonder, I don't think I can create anything original. If that's the case, so
Hmm.
goals, but not goals as in which you hold on to and die at the stake.
Hmm.
Goal
Hmm.
which just help
Hmm.
you move forward.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Tell me, Abhishek. I was, I've not read this book, which I am, it's there on my to-do list. Decentered playwriting.
Yeah.
Decentered playwriting, which is very interesting. I just was going through the topics of it last night, and there is a writing of yours which I found very interesting. The whole title of it, Nine Kinds of Silences.
Mm.
What
Yeah.
is that?
Nine Kinds of Silence is actually a play that I wrote,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is about a woman whose son, she thinks it's his son, who
Hmm.
comes back from a war.
Hmm.
And usually these women are on one side of a curtain, and they
Hmm.
are supposed to ask these men, you can speak about what your experience was in the war. And the men talk about their experience and they type it out,
Hmm.
and it becomes like official government therapy for people who are coming back. And a lot of militaries have done this in the past.
Hmm.
The US Army did this in a very big way during Vietnam,
Hmm.
uh, as soldiers would come back
Hmm.
traumatized.
Hmm.
But in this play,
Hmm.
what happens is one of the soldiers comes back and he says nothing.
Hmm.
He remains quiet.
Hmm.
Now the woman on the other side, who cannot see him, needs him to speak,
Hmm.
because if he doesn't speak, then the government doesn't trust him.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then we don't know
Hmm.
what is he feeling. Is he going to turn out to be an anarchist when he comes back? But
Hmm.
what she recognizes is his silences.
Hmm.
And as she recognizes his silences, she feels that it's
Hmm.
probably her son
Hmm.
who has come back from the war.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and I'm very interested in the idea of
Hmm.
how we as human beings communicate through silence.
Hmm.
I mean, you walk into a room, if it's a familiar space particularly, and sometimes unfamiliar as well. We all can tell whether this is a happy place or a tense place, although nobody has said anything in
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
I think silence communicates a lot.
Hmm.
And live performance, it's one of the biggest aspects of a live performance, the way silence is held in a room,
Hmm.
because it's a weird game. Since the audience, you have to win the audience's silence. The audience is not implicitly silent,
Hmm.
so you have to kind of bring that silence.
Hmm.
Nine Kinds of Silence was an essay by Paul Goodman,
Hmm.
and he wrote a series of a wonderful essay
Hmm.
in a book called In Defense of Poetry.
Hmm.
And I find that essay really beautiful, and I
Hmm.
wanted to it has stayed with me.
Hmm.
And then when I found this story about
Hmm.
this, returning from war,
Hmm.
um, I thought, that's the structure actually which I want to use. So I
Hmm.
use that structure to write this play. This play is structured around the nine kinds of silence.
Hmm. Hmm. Lovely. When you're writing, Abhishek, as a playwright, are you thinking of the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of a society, in what
How
I'm.
important is the audience? Like when you're doing a film, you're constantly asked, okay, who's the audience? Who's the target? And now with the fragmentation of the audience across the space, you know, who is your audience? And are you thinking about your audience?
Yeah, like I said, I think, again, the kind of cinema that you're talking about, I think, is the one which has production houses, and, they're putting in sort of 100 crores, 50 crores into a film, and they need to know
Hmm.
who their audience is.
Hmm.
I would be a dismal failure if I
Hmm.
entered that kind of a situation,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, because I can't make work like that.
Hmm.
I've worked in other places which have had probably large budgets and all of that sometimes, but that's just not my forte. You know.
Hmm.
By which I also want to make the distinction between like having an audience in the way we speak about producing terms and having a society.
Hmm.
I think I'm deeply interested in my society.
Hmm.
When I make work in Bombay, or when I'm making work now in Kerala, or I'm doing something in New York, I'm
Hmm.
interested in what is the society that I'm engaging with, and
Lovely.
what are the questions of this society right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I don't have a relationship with my audience of a buyer and seller.
Hmm.
I don't make work which has to succeed this Friday.
Hmm.
Not because of any other reason. It's just I find it terribly boring, and I think I would also be hence really bad at it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I enjoy sometimes watching work like that.
Hmm.
I love watching Bengali detective series and Hindi films, and many of my friends are in commercial cinema. I enjoy it sometimes, a lot of times actually, especially when they are in it.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean I can make it.
Hmm.
What I am in fact very very interested in is what is the conversation with my society. I want to laugh with people who are my society. I want to make fun of things. I want to have stage tragedies and have complete anarchy in the theater when people leave, to
Hmm.
think of something which we didn't think of earlier,
Hmm.
which we can only think of together.
Yeah.
And I'm deeply appreciative of cinema also, which is like that.
Hmm.
I mean, there are so many great filmmakers now who are working, you know, in this format, which is not necessarily commercial.
Yeah.
Um, but I think to think of an audience and society as interchangeable is not fair. I think
Hmm.
they're not the same thing. They're two
Hmm.
different things. In one, there is a transaction. In the other, there is a relationship, which
Lovely.
is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Audience versus society. I just want to elaborate a bit more on this. How do you, so when you're talking about society as an artist, how do you find that society? That society would be different in every city that you travel in. So, how does that come to you, or how do you go to them?
Yeah. That's a wonderful question. And I think it takes time. It takes time. Like, I lived in Bangalore for 15 years, and
Hmm.
I still very much am part of that city. I made my first work in Canada after 10 years of living,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I felt that now I was part of it enough to know
Hmm.
who would leave their shoes outside the door and who would not. If you were greeting somebody, most likely what color of something would you offer and what color would you not? I think when you understand the metaphors of a place, that's when you're part of that society.
Hmm.
And the metaphor is, I think, the lowest common denominator of understanding whether I'm part of a society or not. And
Yeah.
this doesn't even have to be, this doesn't even have to be actually location. This
Yeah.
can also be, like if I make a play about my mother's generation,
Hmm.
women of her time.
Yeah.
She would be my only window,
Hmm.
because she's the one I know from that. Through
Hmm.
that window, I can enter the lives of other women of her
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
similarly, at least there needs to be one window into a place.
Yeah.
I've been making a work right now with a Brazilian dancer. It's opening end of this month in Brazil.
Wow.
She was my classmate
Yeah.
15 years ago,
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and she's really the window to that story.
Wow.
It's a monologue that she wrote, and now we have composed it to make a dance piece. And she's a movement artist. So
Wow.
without her, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's broadly what I think it is. How do you find that window to the metaphor? Is
Hmm.
what helps us find each society.
Hmm. No, that is such a broad thinking. That is such a great point when it comes to society versus the audience, which is something which can actually expand your way of thinking about your craft when you are creating any form of artwork. So, do you think? I mean, I forget the big budget filmmakers, the big budget audiences. Do you think that if artists, as creators, as filmmakers, or anything, playwrights, uh, think in terms of the society as an audience, how can artists, cultivate that with every work? Like you said, it takes time. With every work that you are doing, how do you cultivate that society as a filmmaker and as an artist?
I think to be able to do that, one has to just be interested in that society, and in work that will last.
Mm.
Uh, I think sometimes we are also in a very noisy time at this point of
Yes.
time. Like success is about how many views something
Yes.
had, and this kind of thing. I think that's terribly. It's a diversion from the real thing. You know, it's a real diversion. Uh, it's kind of pointless to engage in that, in my
Yeah.
view.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I mean,
know.
as an artist, I'm just going to butting in. If you're not there on Instagram and if you're not there on those XYZ social media, they just write you off. I could not find you anywhere on any of the platforms, And I'm like, how do you find Abhishek?
Yeah, I actually have an Instagram which my sister-in-law had created.
Huh?
During COVID, there were these talks which would happen
Yeah.
sometimes on Zoom, but sometimes they would do it only on Instagram. So she created it, but I failed at it twice. So
Mm.
then we shut it. So now it's there somewhere in the world. People sometimes tag me. Again, I'm not taking any great pride in being on it or not being on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's each one's personal choice, and maybe somebody is driven by it. I mean, I have friends who are performers,
Yeah.
and for them, their work is directly connected to how many people like them. How many people know their face is a very important thing, for them.
See, that's how you have reduced yourself too.
So, but that's part of their reality. I don't know what to do about their reality.
Yeah.
But I have never understood why I would be interested to be known by people that I don't know. This is something that I have never understood in my life. I don't know you, and you come to me at the airport and say, "Hi, I would like to take a picture." Okay,
Yeah.
I'm flattered. That's wonderful. No
Yeah.
problem. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very happy. That could be a byproduct of something. But
Mm.
how can that be my whole life? Because
Yeah.
I don't even know you. Like, why do I care about this so much?
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, it's not a value judgment, but I think there has to be a shape to the whole thing. Uh, is it a byproduct or is it my life? Like as an artist, I do want to be recognized. I want people to watch my plays, and but I can't wake up every morning and say, okay, now other than writing the play or making the opera or whatever, writing a book or novel that I'm working on now. I mean, there's nothing else really that I can do than that. Uh, so I think there is fundamentally in this kind of noise. It's also very important for people to think that uh, one has to cut the noise out. I mean, distraction. It's a
Yeah.
complete distraction.
Yeah.
Uh, it's as a performer, maybe it is useful. I don't know. people often get work in places like Bombay based on how many people. I mean, that's a different world. That's not my universe at all. But
Yeah.
I think as a writer, as a director, where your face is actually not even important,
Yeah.
it's actually just the fact that you have credibility in the companies which make work. That is important.
True. 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 True.
Nobody gives me work because they know my face.
Yes.
People give me work because they've seen my work.
Yes.
Totally different thing.
True.
Uh, and I think that's important for at least me, and I think artists that I care about
Hmm.
to be that.
To cultivate your society, do you think that the social media is one of the avenues where you can actually build the society around you?
To some extent, to some extent, I think one of the advantages of social media is that it it cuts down your marketing costs. So if I'm putting up a play and it is in Delhi,
Yeah.
at least earlier, I used to regularly post about, you know, this is a poster, this is what. Now I've understood that I'm on Facebook and nobody is on Facebook. So it's become immaterial whether I post it or not. It's like I still do it sometimes, just like out of there are like 20 people who see it and say, oh, I will tell my mother to go and watch this play. But my friends, they do these videos. They do that, they 30 seconds they will say something and they'll ask their friends. So they are the ones who sell tickets for my shows. I don't sell any ticket for my shows.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, in this way. Uh, but I think social media does help in that way to uh, to have a sort of common interest group.
Mm.
Earlier, I think when we were growing up, in my parents' generation, there was always a club
Yeah.
close by. In the evening,
Mm-hmm.
that club was the place for thinking about world politics and samosa and football, and everything was in that club.
Yeah.
Social media is sort of a digital version of that club right now.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with social media, I think, is that there is a persona
Yeah.
that
True.
people have to exist in very few lines,
Yeah.
and that is not how life is. Life is
Yeah.
contradictory.
Yes.
If you see people's social media, including mine probably, you will see no contradiction. If I had a political belief 10 years ago, you will see me say the exact same thing today, which is
Yeah.
unnatural. Like, if you have a deeper conversation with me, I probably have contradictory views. So there's also something very false in the design of that persona,
Mm.
which is not helpful for an artist.
Which is not helpful for an artist. Abhishek, how would you correlate or demarcate drama on stage versus drama on screen?
Mm. You mean theater on screen or
No.
drama on screen, like film
Yeah.
or any other medium?
Yeah, film or any other medium versus your stage.
Yeah. I think there is one simple difference, which is that on stage, you can have multiple times at the same moment, and on film, you can have multiple space at the same moment.
Hmm.
I mean, there are exceptions to this, of course, but
Hmm.
by and large.
Hmm.
So for example, you can have a scene where Duryodhana is dying, and Duryodhana's mother is seeing him as a small boy at the same moment on stage.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can exist in past, present, and future together.
Hmm.
Cinema, by its very nature, is
Hmm.
actually written in time. You know,
Yeah.
you can't do past, present, future at the same moment unless you're in some kind of dream sequence or some such thing. And
Hmm.
again, I'm sure there are exceptions to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But by and large, in cinema, by the virtue of it being a digital or a recorded medium,
Yeah.
you can only record in linear time.
Yeah.
Your structure can be non-linear,
Yeah.
but you can watch it only in a linear way.
Hmm.
But you can exist in many spaces. The
Hmm.
space is not one.
Hmm.
By which again, I don't mean location. I mean just space.
Yeah.
In cinema, you can be, on a mountain and in an airplane at the same time.
Yeah.
Not at the same time, but in consecutive times.
Hmm.
In
Hmm.
theater, you can do that, but
Hmm.
it's much harder.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think that's the main difference in the dramaturgy of the two things.
Hmm.
Uh, and which is why sometimes, when there are good novels which are adapted to film and theater
Yeah.
and successfully, if the film is also successful and the play is also successful,
Yeah.
they don't actually read the same way. You know, because of, I think, this difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Why do you think? I've asked this question in my earlier podcast episodes because of my fascination. Why do you think? Because you come from stage. Why do you think that Shakespeare, even after 100 years, is the most relevant playwright on the planet?
Because of British colonialization, I think, I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
350 years the Japanese had ruled the world, we would be all reading Ziami today. If the Indians had ruled the world, everybody would be doing Kalidas, and so I mean, I think Shakespeare is a great playwright. There's no doubt about that. But why
Ah,
is he the only one, or why is he relevant worldwide? Is that we put in a lot of effort to make Shakespeare relevant, also, right? I mean, uh, you read
wow.
the.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a it's a fascinating thing. If you see the Arabs, no, they
Yeah.
have Arab Hamlets is like a big
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
Now, what is really fascinating is the Arabs got Shakespeare
Hmm.
French translation,
Hmm.
right? So Shakespeare arrived in Arab world through French. But the French kind of always thought that Shakespeare was not really Moliere. So there is a problem.
Hmm.
They always thought that Shakespeare's plays are unresolved. So
Hmm.
when the French rewrote the Shakespeare for the Arabs, they kind of corrected the plays. They changed the endings, they changed all this stuff, but of course they called it Shakespeare, and it reached to the Arab world, and the Arab world did Shakespeare, which is nothing like Shakespeare's first folio, because it is a corrected version by the French, but it was still considered to be the greatest work of this planet because it is Shakespeare.
Wow.
So many of the Shakespeare things that we are reading right now are not really. A great example is, a play like, again, I'm going back to Hamlet. There are three versions of Hamlet.
Yeah.
Nobody
Oh.
really knows what the real version is. If you look at the first folio, there are three versions. You pick up the Arden Shakespeare, the latest edition, it'll show you three Hamlets with great commentaries about why this could have possibly been there or that could have been there, why this scene in this version is earlier. And I mean, look, he was a dramatist of
Hmm.
great power.
Hmm.
He was a commercially successful and critically successful artist of his time. So, I mean, just to give an example, the other day I was talking to somebody who's a Shakespeare expert, and he was telling
Wow.
that, in a time when the population of London was about, I think, 500,000 people,
Hmm.
about 1 lakh people in a month used to come and watch Shakespeare's plays,
Wow.
which means that people are coming from other places as well to come and watch his work.
Yeah.
And it's what, 20 years in which he wrote all this. This is a man who is writing, following up Othello with Lear, or
Hmm.
vice versa. But I mean, he's written the tragedies one after another. His sense of language is just spectacular. But we don't actually dig that deep often into the language.
Hmm.
Like in the second scene of Hamlet, there's a pun on the word son,
Hmm.
where he's punning on the fact that there's sun, son, and that him as the son.
Yeah.
This can only be done in the English language. You can't
Yeah.
translate this pun to anything else, right? So
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
have all discovered our own ways of doing it. So
Hmm.
it's not like Shakespeare is kind of universal. There is a lot of effort that everybody has also put in to make Shakespeare universal. Shakespeare is great, and there are many great writers of that time. Nothing to take
Yeah.
away from Shakespeare. But I
Hmm.
think outside of British colonialism, it wouldn't have become the phenomena that it is.
Hmm. Wow, that is such a perspective change. You're the first one. I've had Shakespeare episodes with people living in London, with people who are from UK, and of course they have their own perspective why Shakespeare is great because he's great.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no other reason to it. But yeah, adding the colonial part to it is something that perhaps no one has mentioned about it. But did Shakespeare even exist? Because we even have his photograph that it's running on the net, which is the right photograph.
I think so. I think there's enough proof that there's Shakespeare and there's one man who wrote it. I mean, with anything that is that successful,
Hmm.
there are many versions of, it's not him, it's his
Yeah.
whatever nanny who wrote it, and all of this. But I mean, there's enough coherence, there's enough scholarship to see that it is probably one one person. I mean, we have to understand one very simple thing,
Yeah.
that in our culture,
Yeah.
you can write the Ramayana 100 times and say this is Valmiki's, this is Tulsi's, this is Kamban, this is etc. etc. And it is completely acceptable
Yeah.
in the way we think about texts
Yeah.
in our textual tradition. But in their textual tradition, it's not possible to have five Shakespeares, right? It's not accepted. One
Mm.
has also known that Shakespeare has taken the story of Hamlet from a real visit to the Crombo Castle by some other people. So the story is set in a Danish castle, or the Romeo and Juliet is an Italian short story. So he has taken those things, but we know that it is done by one person who's extremely once in a generation writer of language and idea and metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
That's there.
Any reference points of the authors that today's artists should read? What any recommendation on it?
But I think for anybody who wants to read, and if that's their path to be an artist, they should read widely, if possible, across languages. I think that's very helpful. I think till my generation, we read in more than one languages, which has been a very helpful thing for me to read, in Bangla and Hindi and English, and to see things, that way, because every language carries uh, its own logic, its own linguistic and
Yeah.
metaphoric logic. Uh, in terms of, if I have to say, there are two books which I think are very useful in general for artists. One is a book called Six Lessons in Drawing by William Kentridge, the South African artist. It's actually got nothing, it's not a drawing book at all, but he starts with his first lecture. He did these six lectures. The first one was about thinking of the artist as a philosopher. What does it mean?
Hmm.
Second was to think of the artist as somebody who is aware of the history of their location.
Hmm.
Say, let's say if you are in Bombay, then what is the history of Bombay? And so where are you in that?
Hmm.
Then to look at the history of your own family,
Hmm.
see what comes. And to end with what is on your bookshelf. So to
Hmm.
span the larger goal
Yeah.
of what am I philosophically versus what am I reading tonight.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Yeah.
beautiful book. And
Yeah.
Kentridge is a great artist who has worked across film, theater, opera, various things. So his thinking about the arts is very deep, and
Hmm.
and also very anarchic and funny. So
Hmm.
that's a great book. The other book that I think is very nice is a book by Orhan Kamal, the Turkish writer, who wrote this book called In Jail with Hikmat.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
when Orhan Kamal was, I think, 17, if I'm not mistaken, he wanted to be a writer, and he
Hmm.
wanted to go to university to become a writer.
Hmm.
But they found some communist literature on him, and they put him
Hmm.
in jail.
Hmm.
And he thought his life is over, and whatever. Now, in his cell,
Hmm.
there were three beds, and one
Hmm.
bed was empty.
Hmm.
After some days, there was a huge hue and cry in the prison, and
Hmm.
they came to know that the poet Nizam Hikmat
Hmm.
was his hero. This is the reason why he wanted to be a writer. Was being transferred from one jail to another, and
Hmm.
Nizam Hikmat was transferred to his prison.
Hmm.
Not only to his prison, but to his cell on the
Hmm.
third bed.
Wow.
So it's about like the 1 year or 1.5 years that Orhan Kamal was 17, Nizam Hikmat was 40 something,
Hmm.
and he says, "Will you teach me how to be a writer?"
Hmm.
And it's about their interaction
Hmm.
in jail
Ah,
of
nice.
what makes a writer. And I think in India we have a lot of I really like reading all the writings of Satyajit Ray.
Yeah.
His our films, their films, or
Yeah.
My Years with Opu.
Yeah.
Such great books on how a person works at a project.
Yeah.
The doggedness of it, the depth of what he's talking about is just beautiful.
Yeah.
The way I think that's something everybody can learn from. Any,
Yeah. Doggedness of it. Uh, in today's times, the understanding of arts in a quick consumption era,
mm.
has it transformed? Do you see that changing drastically in the next coming years? And do you think artists should think like that, or no, this is how I'm going to go about it? The doggedness is going to be the same no matter what.
I think, there is no, I don't think ever in this world we will find a unidirectional trend in arts. It's not possible.
Mm. Mm.
As long
Populist
as
trend? Populist
probably,
trend?
probably populist trends, yeah.
Mm.
But
Mm.
I'm not, I have no interest in populism, so I wouldn't know,
Lovely. Yeah.
that. But I think, as long as we dream differently,
Hmm.
which I think we do, all of us
Yeah.
dream. You live with somebody for 30 years and they're
Yeah.
lying down next to you and they're dreaming something else and you're dreaming something else, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
your child dreams completely different things at different ages.
Yeah.
So as long as we dream differently, there'll be different kinds of art. There'll be as much horror as there'll be romance, as there will be short and long and all of this. I think really for artists, it's very important to recognize that hopefully, we understand that out of the many people in this world, most people don't even get the opportunity to recognize if they have a gift. Out of those who recognize it, who have the opportunity, very few people get to pursue it.
Yes.
Out of the people who get to pursue it, then very few people succeed at it once in a while.
Yes.
So if you are there, if you've got to that point where you've written a short story, you've made a painting which is sort of successful, by whatever standards,
Yeah.
that's very good. I mean, just stay with that, just work on it,
Yeah.
because you are already in such a privileged position
Yeah.
at that time to think about anybody else and what their trajectory is, or is it like 100 views or 10 views.
Yeah.
It's sort of you're kind of compromising on what you have deep inside you,
Yeah.
for a fake picture. uh,
Yes.
that's a very poor transaction in my view.
Yes.
It's a very bad deal.
Yes, it's a bad deal. It's definitely a very bad deal. And so, what a great point. Dream differently and do not follow the populist culture. I totally adhere to it, and it is so lovely to talk to you, Abhishek.
Let ChatGPT down for you.